Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and I'm here once again with Jeff Miller, who's our travel law insider and a veteran travel attorney that I've known for many, many years. Jeff and I have been hanging out together for too long, I think. It's over 25 years, something like that. But we thought this was a great time to talk with Jeff about some of the big legal issues hitting the scene right now, especially as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the biggest, of course, is that there is still no cruising from U.S. ports because the CDC has instituted a conditional sail order, and the cruise lines say they've met all the conditions to sail again, and many of them have. And in fact, just recently, Florida filed a lawsuit against the CDC and the government. So we're going to ask Jeff about that lawsuit and other legal actions and what the implications are and whether any of this has a chance of succeeding. And you'll find out about all that and more on Insider Travel Report. Now let's turn to this issue. And the reason why we started talking about this is that it was just literally a week ago that Florida's governor decided he threatened to do this, but now he actually went and did it. And he has sued the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and the government to try to get cruising back, to get the CDC to rescind its conditional sail order, get it withdrawn, and get cruises back sailing out of U.S. ports. Can you tell us a little about this lawsuit, at least from your knowledge of it?
Well, it was filed obviously in a federal court called Central District of Florida, actually in the Tampa location, Tampa Courthouse. There's all kinds of issues with this lawsuit. Getting to the bottom line, I don't think it has any chance of succeeding for a lot of different legal reasons, but it's interesting that it was filed. And a lot of the cruise lines have not really commented on it, which is also, I think, interesting. But the question is, does Florida have what's called standing to sue, or could they really be a party to this lawsuit? No, they're not. They're not one of the cruise lines. Do they have a right to sue the CDC or a health and safety issue? And we've had some Supreme Court decisions in the last couple of months dealing with religious freedom and COVID restrictions, nothing dealing with health and safety, which is clearly within the domain of the federal government.
Right.
We talk about international commerce because it's cruises are going out of the country, all falls within federal law. So I don't think it has any chance at all of succeeding through the lawsuit. Maybe the goal is to prompt CDC to take another look at this and maybe plan out in late summer and let cruise lines start sailing again.
So you think it might give the CDC cause to rethink its positions based maybe not necessarily on the lawsuit, but other factors?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be based on the lawsuit, but maybe it'll force them to really go back and take a look. Is it safe to sail? Is it healthy to sail? But the lawsuit itself was obviously filed for certain particular reasons. I think it has no chance of succeeding. And even as you get through, they ask for preliminary injunctions. It could take months to get to that stage. And if the government were to lose at the district court level, they would take it up immediately to the Court of Appeals. I don't expect them to lose. I think it's going to get tossed out of court.
So you think it's going to get tossed out by the federal district court down there? I guess it's in Tampa somewhere.
Yeah, but once the U.S. Attorney's Office, or I guess Justice, is actually handled it. I'm not sure which federal agency is handling the case, because they could both be doing it. Once they start filing pleas, it's going to get tossed out.
So you think it's more of sort of a political stunt by Florida's governor than a case that a suit that has really any merit or hope that it's going to succeed?
Well, I'm not going to actually refer to that, respond to that directly, but let's say I think the case has no merit.
Okay. Got it. So, but, other cruise lines have taken, and you're right that so far I haven't heard very much from other cruise lines about the Florida lawsuit, but the major cruise lines themselves have sort of taken a very different strategic approaches to this situation. Just a week before the Florida lawsuit, Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings sent its own letter to the CDC saying it had basically felt it had fulfilled all the conditions the CDC required and actually was going to start mandating that any guests aboard would be vaccinated so that they should be allowed to cruise as of July 4th. What do you think of that particular letter, and does that have any chance of swaying the CDC?
Well, a couple of comments. First of all, the governor of Florida has issued an executive order within the last 10 days saying that a vaccination passport would not be allowed in this state. Meaning in plain English, you can't require to show somebody you've been vaccinated in order to go into a restaurant, a movie, a cruise line, an airline, or anything. Now, my understanding is he's trying to get the Florida legislature to implement that into a statute, but that flies directly in the face of what NCL is saying. We want people to show us a vaccination certificate before we let them on the plane, the boat. So how do you factor that in with what the governor has mandated through an executive order, which I also think has a lot of issues with it, but that, as of now, nobody has really gone against that. I assume if Disney or Universal up in Orlando want to require a vaccine to get you on the premises, I think things will change rather quickly.
Right.
With NCL has always been somewhat of an outlier. The history of some of the executives came from Renaissance, which was certainly an outlier, or certainly anti-trade, anti-travel advisor for years, director sales. I think they just do things differently.
Right.
And what's interesting, they still have Oceania and Region, which are different market than the mass market NCL ships, and they're not really pushing to sell those. I think the reason is the people that would be on those ships aren't looking to sell.
Right.
My view, if you will. So I don't see much happening with NCL doing that. I think that's their business approach, and they want to fill the ships. It's a mass market ship. It competes with the big ships of RCL and to some extent some of the Carnival brands. But they're looking for a market that may or may not exist. They think they can fill it with people that are willing to travel if they make it less expensive enough for a 7-day, and people may say, well, I'm willing to take my chances. And so be it. I mean, that's the business model they have, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think the letter has any enforcement at all. And then again, for PR, they're trying to show the agency community, hey, we're looking out for you. They're trying to show all the people that have all the credits on their ships, because they took credits and not cash, which is a huge mistake in my opinion.
Right.
You got to use those credits up.
Sure. Well, that's a whole other issue. Yeah, no. And of course, it wasn't like the other major cruise lines have signed on with that letter either. Neither Carnival Corporation nor Royal Caribbean Group have joined Norwegian Cruise Lines Holdings, in that letter. Why do you think, what is their strategy? Why is it different?
The other two cruise lines?
Yeah.
I think they just they have a different business model to some extent. I just don't think they want to be banging up against the federal government at this moment. I think they're trying to work things out and make sure they can comply with whatever CDC wants. But keep in mind that a poster child for what not to do in a pandemic is NCL. If you have any doubts about that, look at the lawsuits that have been filed against them, loads of them. They were still marketing and putting people in ships and telling people allegedly that it was safe when the pandemic had already was in full uproar. So, I mean, they are the poster child of what you really didn't want to do, with the pandemic.
Well, of course, that maybe at that point they weren't sure exactly what was going on way back when, and it might have been
there's allegations only within the lawsuits, which I'm not involved in, that they're marketing people, and they apparently have copies of stuff that was done telling passengers and agents that it's safe.
Yeah, well, it is interesting when at the beginning of this pandemic, when different cruise lines were saying different things, and of course they all got shut down in March anyway. It was really the pandemic started. I guess it started technically in January, February, and then
you had a couple of the Princess ships that couldn't find a port.
I do remember that. That was a challenge, and they couldn't come back in, and that was a tragedy. But let's talk a little bit about a lot of the cruise lines, including Norwegian and including Royal Caribbean and including Carnival Corp have actually started running cruises out of foreign ports, or will be starting, I should say. They're going to have in June and July. They're going to go out of Bahamas, Bermuda. They're going to go out of St. Martin, I think Antigua recently. And then in Europe, they'll go out of Greece and Crete and Israel, just trying to find other places where people can fly to take cruises. What is the implications of this, even from a legal perspective, that people are going to have to travel to these different places, whether they're going to use their future cruise credits or anything else to get on these things. But Is this a good strategy in the face of not being able to restart in the U.S.?
Well, it's a strategy because it also keeps some of their employees working again who've certainly been devastated by this. These folks who had a middle-class life in their home countries and then have no income for a year and a half or a year. But the question is, can they get people to sail on it? You got to really want to go on a cruise to go to Nassau or to Bermuda or to the Caribbean, particularly if you're in Florida where you're a drive-to market. And you got to really want to do that. It raises a lot of different issues. And it doesn't even get to the safety issue or the health issue.
Right.
How bad do you want to go on a cruise? I'm sure they can find people that will be willing to go on those cruises if they make them incentive enough to do that.
Well, it is interesting because months ago when Royal first announced that they would try some test cruises, I know we saw a ton of emails and people saying, I'll volunteer, I'll go. And that was from travel advisors and their clients. So clearly there is some pent up demand that people do want to get back to cruising.
Absolutely. But the question is, who are those people? And, is it a one-time shot because it's a really good bargain? And what are the demographics of those folks? As I said earlier, I don't think that NCL expects a lot of Oceania and Regent passengers to be coming back real soon.
Right. Now,
it's going to be on Seabourn and Cunard and Silver Sea. And the question is, what is Disney going to do?
Yeah. Well, I think they're looking at, I think I read that we reported on it that they're going to try some cruises out of the UK and some other things, as is the newly minted Virgin Voyages, which was supposed to start here in July. So we're going to see what happens there. But now, I guess in your view, probably litigation isn't really the way to handle this to get cruising back this summer. Is that what you would say?
Correct. First of all, litigation is ongoing unless you could get a preliminary injunction and keep it enforced, which is never going to happen.
Right.
So the case could go on for years, literally.
No, it's right that they have to go through the courts and everything like that. And I believe actually that the American Society of Travel Advisors even last year threatened to sue the CDC. Do you think that, in your view, that wouldn't have had a better chance of succeeding, would it?
No, you have the same issue. Do they have standing to sue? No. What is their standing to sue the CDC? They don't operate the ships. They don't own the ships. It's an economic decision that obviously hurts their members and their members' clients. But you got the same issues.
No, absolutely. Well, let's say, so in your view, we just have to wait out the CDC at this point and just hope that they're going to start recognizing that the cruise lines have taken a lot of precautions and, some of them are requiring vaccinations, regardless of what the Florida rule is going to be, because I honestly think that at least initially, all cruise lines are going to require vaccinations. Some were hesitant to say that, but there are now increasingly numbers of cruise lines that require such vaccinations.
I would agree with that, but I don't think you're going to see multiples of ships sailing this year. You may see, a number of brands have a number of ships out, but nowhere near what you normally would see. I think there's a lot of cruise lines that aren't coming back this year. There's too many unknowns.
Well, obviously the Alaska season is all but dead. It's getting way too close to restart that, except for some smaller vessels that have our U.S. flag. So you'll see those, although, I still see Holland America and Princess keep holding out hope, but I can't imagine they would start in July as they say they might, or even August. But who knows?
You can't do it. You can't go to Canada.
Well, you can't. I mean, the idea would be if they could get a waiver of the passenger vessel.
Jones Act? Good luck.
Well, that's it. Or maybe someone in Canada would take pity. I don't quite know what's going on there.
I don't see. Canada is shut down, as you know, completely.
Yeah.
There's no way you're taking cruise ships into Canada. So you'd have to get the Jones Act. It would have to be set aside, which is not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think it will, unfortunately. So we're probably not going to see cruising out of Alaska this year, except for the smaller ships. And we already know that there are 2 or 3 lines that will be operating up there, but the big ones, that the big brands will not be able to sail because they can't get there.
Well, they got a foreign flag vessel. You can't put it there.
That's right. That's right. So they have to stop in either Vancouver or Victoria to get on the way up there. Now, in your view, because of this situation, and let's say, travel advisors are booking their clients on cruises that leave this year, whether it's smaller ships or maybe some of these ships that are going out of foreign ports, such as the Bahamas, such as Bermuda. Should their clients be taking out additional travel and medical insurance?
Well, assuming you could get it, yes, but it's not inexpensive. And as you know, as we get older, and I guess I'm older than you are, but as we get older, the insurance gets to be very expensive.
Right.
So you got that issue. I mean, can I afford it? Is it offered? Can I afford it? What does it actually cover, and what are the exceptions to it? And every policy will be different, even though there's a cluster of really good companies that offer it. Every one of these policies is going to be somewhat different.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if there would be, because of this situation now, that medical travel insurance is more important than ever. And I mean, that seems to be what we came away with a little bit from this, although that doesn't cover COVID-19 yet, to my knowledge. I don't know how many insurance companies have put in policies that would cover COVID-19.
I would agree. So if I want to get a policy and they know I'm sailing in August or July, that policy is going to be a fortune because it's risk. Insurance is risk-based.
Now,
we don't know the unknown. What's the odds I'm going to get sick on that cruise ship?
Now, what should if, let's say, again, travel advisors do book some cruises this summer and into the fall, should they really seek out a separate waiver of liability in the case of their clients get COVID on board, or in case their cruise is canceled, delayed, or put in quarantine for that matter because of an outbreak?
Yeah, you want what I call a disclaimer, a consumer disclosure notice that particularly addresses that one issue. But if it's strong enough, as you know, that's a deal breaker for a lot of clients. When you tell them, hey, you could get sick or get disrupted or quarantined, they say, hey, maybe I don't want to go.
Right.
So you got to balance that. But there's no way an agent should be selling cruises without some protection, because we don't know what's going to happen. You could get to a foreign port and not get out because there's an outbreak, or not be allowed back into the United States because there's an outbreak.
No, and that happened previously at the beginning of this whole crisis, where people, as you mentioned, couldn't get back or ships couldn't find ports of call. They eventually did, but it was a bit of a mess comparatively. And we don't want to have that situation again, that's for sure. Now, just in summary, what do you forecast is going to happen this summer and into fall to the cruise industry, at least those ships trying to sail out of the U.S.?
I think that some ships will be sailing by August. I'm not sure how many, because once you get into a school schedule, families that are planning to go during the summer, assuming kids are back actually in face-to-face schools, you have that issue. But I don't see any great number of cruise ships going out this summer.
Right.
And I can tell you my recommendation to friends, clients, hangers-on, and passers-by is don't travel internationally this year. There's too many unknowns. 2022 is fine, I think, based on what we know now. But 2021 is an unknown, and the last thing we do is go on a trip someplace and get quarantined,
right,
or not be able to get home. When you're on your own expenses, of course, you got to pay for that. Not good to me. That's not good, but everybody's different.
Yeah, I know, it's a true thing. Although some resorts, and I was at just one recently where they came out with an interesting thing, is if you end up getting quarantined for 14 days, they were willing to put me up for those 14 days. And so I was actually rooting for the positive COVID test at that point.
Yeah, but the difference is you could work from there. If I have to get back to a job and my boss says, where are you? You could have no job.
That's true, except now a lot of us are all working remotely, thank God. But and of course I work from anywhere. So I was in a little bit of a different position. You're absolutely right. But I work, I would have been happy to work from the resort for another 14 days. Now, yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry.
What else can you tell our travel advisor viewers, about this whole thing, the Florida lawsuit, the other actions by the major cruise lines, such as NCLH, what the other cruise lines are doing, trying to work with the CDC Anything else that they should know?
Well, one of the things that's an unknown is what we're accustomed to cruising. I mean, we remember midnight buffets on cruises. We're old enough to know that. Nobody would, that's gone. But what's the cruise going to look like when you get on it? Is there going to be spacing? Do I have to wear a mask?
Right.
If I'm going to have to wear a mask on a cruise ship, I don't think I want to go.
Right.
That's me personally. And do you enforce the mask, or do you have the person that says, I'm not wearing a mask? What do you do with them? Throw them overboard? I mean, so you have those issues. I mean, I was on a flight a couple of weeks ago on a Southwest flight from Baltimore to PBI. The gentleman wouldn't put on a mask. The flight attendant said, I'm not arguing with you. That's our policy. When you get to PBI, you're going to get arrested. He became a guest of the county.
Okay.
But yeah, what happens on a cruise ship? Do I have to wear a mask? That would be a no-brainer for me not to go.
Right.
Two, if I have to wear a mask, what happens to people that don't? Are you going to enforce it, or are you not going to enforce it? You're going to enforce it uniformly, or I realize, oh, they're not really enforcing it, do what you want. And those are the unknowns, which is why you really shouldn't be selling cruises at this particular moment.
Well, we'll see what happens. I know I've done already a couple of cruises, one domestic with American Countess. And yes, we were encouraged to wear masks, but at a certain point, they also thought we were like in a bubble. So we didn't really always do it. I was on another cruise ship in Galapagos, and we were once again encouraged to wear masks, except when we were out on shore excursions and things like that. But I'm all for having a walk the plank thing for those people who won't wear masks, and we'll have it at noon every day, and we'll lose a few, but at least we'll be safer, right?
Well, the other question is, what are the cruise line's lawyers going to require a passenger to sign when you get on the ship?
Right. You think that's going to be more extensive now that they're going to be? Well, I also see what's happening is a lot of these cruise lines, and in fact, the ones that I was on, they actually had you sign a form saying you agreed to do these things. And that was, wear a mask, be socially distant. If you had any symptoms, to tell about it, all these different things you checked off and you signed it. And I assume that is a legally binding document?
I assume it would be, but then when I take the mask off, what are you going to do to me?
Well, like as I said, walk the plank, right?
Well, the question is, I get on the ship knowing that I signed that document, and you've told me as a cruise line, you're going to enforce it. I get on the ship and I find out that you're not enforcing that, I wind up suing the cruise line.
Yeah, that's another issue. Yeah. No, it's
either enforce it or don't enforce it.
Yeah, well, I think, the idea was that most passengers who would be eager to get back on cruise ships would be amenable to some of these, the base COVID things. And now, of course, it's the whole issue of vaccinations, which, even we are seeing some blowback from that, people saying, well, I medically can't get a vaccination. My clients don't agree with vaccinations. What do I do? I mean, at that point you say, well, you wait for 22 or 23, right?
Yeah, well, I've been in Florida for 3 months, and this is the Wild West. As you know, anything goes here. I mean, it's wide open. No mask requirements. Even the counties that had mask requirements, the government did away with them. The governor did away with any penalties, when they originally had them. So, I mean, I see people on the street. Some people, particularly older folks like me, are wearing masks, and younger people are out there partying like crazy.
Yeah, well, that is, again, Florida, but it's unfortunately becoming a lot more widespread in other parts of the country as well, as I've seen. And some people are trying to be cautious, and a lot of people are thinking it's over and the heck with it. So it is a big challenge now. And as we know, the numbers are not speaking in the favor of people who think it's over, because there are still many more people getting infected, maybe not dying, and maybe not always, some more people going into the hospital in some states. And as you know, I've had it, so I know how serious it is. And but it is a shame that they don't pay attention to, at least for a while longer. And then, yes, get a vaccine. That's the biggest issue.
The problem is the unknown for people who've had COVID. The unknown is what are the future implications of it. They don't know because there's no real research done on it.
Well, I guess I'm the guinea pig. We'll find out in a few years, but it's we'll see. I don't know. I'd probably grow a third leg or something. We'll see what happens, but or maybe a third eye. I could use that actually, but we'll see. Jeff, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us about this issue. It is a very contentious issue, and giving us the perspective that you don't think the Florida lawsuit has merit or has jurisdictional issues, and that it probably won't succeed. But we shall see. We shall see about that one. We will see about the Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings letter to the CDC, whether they come back and start to talk a little bit more. And we'll see what happens to the other major cruise lines as we emerge from this pandemic. I know everyone is eager and chomping at the bit to get back to business because we've been a year without. And that has damaged, hundreds, if not thousands, of travel advisors around the country.
Also, keep in mind, these are foreign corporations.
Right.
They're headquartered in Miami, in Dade County, but they're all foreign corporations, and all the ships are registered in other countries. You're not dealing with Coca-Cola, if you will.
Well, but we are dealing with major companies that are on the stock exchanges. So.
Oh, absolutely, but they're not, they're still not, they obviously are doing what they can do for financial reasons. So
do you think that has affected their ability to be effective lobbyists on their own behalf because they are not recognized as U.S. companies?
Well, I think that hurt them with any of the bills through Congress to get COVID relief.
Right. Well, they weren't part of any of that. I mean,
they tried to get it though.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, you're right. But they and unfortunately there are a lot of U.S. employees of those corporations, so they were out of luck. And we all know people who are no longer in the business because of that. And it has been tough for that. But I do think that because of that status, they may have a little harder time with the CDC and maybe with the Congress and the federal government.
But that's the only business model they can have. They can't be in business and comply with U.S. labor laws.
Well, we'll see. We shall see what happens. Jeff, it's been great to get your perspective on this. And we'll come back to you soon with additional legal issues that arise with this whole pandemic. And maybe soon we'll get to talk about legal issues that have nothing to do with the pandemic.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. Stay healthy.
I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.